Today's guest is Lacey Filipich, a financial expert and the founder of Money School and the author of Money School. We dive deep into the mindset you need to become wealthy and the market opportunities that are going to shift the whole financial system. We break down the key market insights that people aren't aware of and how you can get ahead of the curve. This is The Growth Concept.
Lacey Filipich, welcome to The Growth Concept podcast.
Cheers, Kenny. Thank you for having me. I am delighted to be here.
Lacey, your mission is to help and educate the younger people of this world financially so they equip themselves to have a powerful difference in the world. Is that still your mission today? And how did you come to this amazing mission?
Well, starting with how I came to it, I was lucky. I won the ovarian lottery and my mum taught me about money. And so I started saving when I was 10 and started investing when I was 19. And then when I had a massive burnout at work and I took 6 months off, and my friends all said, but how come you can take such a long break from work, Lacey? Like, what's the deal here? And I was like, well, what have you been doing with your money? I've been saving and investing. I was starting to get a bit of a passive income. And they were like, oh, we've got credit card debt and car loans. And if I stopped work tomorrow, I would be destitute in a month. And I was like, what? Hold on. Like, sorry, did you not have these chats? Like, That was the first time I really realised how lucky I had been and that my friends hadn't had that. So that was where the mission for Money School came. Because I was like, this stuff's not complicated. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's pretty straightforward. And if you learn it young, it's really easy. You know, like so much of my saving, people go, how do you, because I've been saving half of every dollar since I was 10. I'm like, I don't think about it. I haven't thought about it for 2 decades.
It's that habit.
Do it. Yeah.
Yeah, incredible.
Because I've been doing it for so long. And this is the advantage, like, I always point to myself, this is what happens when someone is raised with financial education, when they get taught this stuff. So that was where the mission for Money School came out. I was like, this is terrible. We have to change this. And so that was 15 years ago. So that's kept me going. And certainly I do find over that 15 years, my mission is I've taken on extra stuff of that. So initially it was like, we just have to teach people the skills and they'll be fine. And the further I've got along, the more I've realised how much systemic change needs to happen as well. So there's still no excuse for not doing the things. You still got to do the things, right? You know, you can't get away without that. But I've come more to acknowledge the systemic pressures that make it hard for people to do what I did. And so I do a lot more work in advocacy now and a lot more work with people who need financial counselling and those kinds of things, which are, you can't tell someone to budget their way out of poverty. That's not going to work. Yeah,
exactly. Especially when you're spending 95, 100% of every paycheck. And it's like, well, what am I going to do with $50?
Exactly. And I think naively as a young person, I was like, oh no, it's all personal choice. And now I am very much on the, look, 20% of it's personal choice. You still have to play your hand the best you can. There's no excuse to not do these things, but acknowledge if the pressures that you're under at the moment make it hard to do that, and that's okay. And so more and more towards systemic change. And then I think the last year for me has been kind of an existential crisis because I've started to realise the impact of warming on our wealth. And look, I want a nice planet, that's good, but I am absolutely petrified of how climate change is going to affect property, shares and super. And none of it is
interesting.
Good. Yeah,
okay.
So I'm actually really reworking all my content at the moment and thinking about how I can communicate this to people in a way that doesn't make them panic. So please don't sell everything, everybody. We don't have to panic here, but we really need to be aware that 1 in 10 properties is going to be uninsurable in the next 10 years, and that GDP, global production, 55% of it depends on nature. So that's going to hit share prices, which is going to hit super. So we've got to do everything we can to turn that around now. If you like money and you want to preserve your wealth, that's going to be important too. And that, I think, is a factor that I feel like I'm slow to the party on. But then when I talk to all the financial advisors, very few of them are talking about it. Very few of them have it on their radar. BlackRock, like the world's biggest asset manager with I think it's US $11.6 trillion under management. It's bigger than our super and property combined, They only started writing about this in January this year. So we are slow to the party, which makes me quite nervous, but I still think we can do something about it. So yeah, that's kind of where my mission has shaped, which has been energizing, but also slightly terrifying.
100%. I love that. In your book, you did mention the environment, climate change, and I read this and I'm like, I've never heard of this before. So that was interesting. How is climate change, whether you believe in it or not, whatever. How does this affect the finance market as a whole? You were saying 1 in 10 properties would be uninsurable.
Yeah.
And shares could go down, maybe, who knows, but where does this all come into line?
Well, there's only really two mechanisms for wealth creation. So think of wealth creation as separate from the inflation of money. You know, when we talk about things like crypto, that's an inflation of money. That's not actually an underlying asset. The underlying assets for us, you're either got scarcity, which is what makes property prices go up. You know, as Mark Twain said, like, buy land, they're not making it anymore. That's what drives property prices up, scarcity.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, you've got human beings taking raw materials, which can include time and their brain power, and adding value to them. And that's business, which we own through stocks. So they're the two kinds of mechanisms for wealth generation. Everything is one of those two things for actual growth in value. So on the property side, we have this issue with uninsurability. And I guess this is why I think it doesn't actually matter if you believe in climate change. Like, I think it's pretty well accepted now, but there are still skeptics.
Yeah, 100%.
But the impact on nature is the thing we've got to worry about. So with the rising number of disasters that we experience, so we've seen it already, you know, fires in the Gippsland area in Victoria, we've got flooding in Queensland and northern New South Wales. Fire is a big risk for us here in Western Australia.
Yeah.
When those properties become uninsurable, as in you can't get a premium at any price. So keep in mind, for example, in Lismore, the year before the big floods, flood insurance was already $20,000 a year.
Whoa, that makes you think, who can afford that?
Yeah, so there's this whole, I can't afford the premium, but then we're getting to a point where the insurance won't even offer the premium. They can't. They cannot take the premium because the risk is so high. So there was this board member of Allianz, who is one of the biggest insurers in the world, and he earlier this year was quoted in this article, and of course they've got the title asked about, in my opinion, but that's okay. It was basically climate change is going to destroy capitalism, and we're like, well, no, capitalism's kind of done the climate change anyway. But never mind. He was pointing out that as houses become uninsurable, you can't get a mortgage for them. Like a mortgage is insurance is a prerequisite for a mortgage, because the bank, you know, if you lose the house and you can't sell it, you know, they need to know you can replace it. So if you can't get a mortgage, your buyer pool for your house is only cash buyers. So we're seeing this already in Victoria. So there's like 8 councils in the Gippsland area.
I remember you saying that. It's already happening over east.
Yes, it is. And like, so in that one of those councils, 49% cash sales now. 49%. So property price, when you can only sell to cash, and like, that's a really good market to be a buyer in, you know, where you're like, oh, well, I know you thought it was worth 500 grand. I'll offer you 200 because I can pay cash. Like, that's what happens over time. And so as those increasing disasters happen and we see more of that, we're going to have these areas where people own a home, possibly with a mortgage, but can't recoup enough selling it to cover the mortgage. And then where do they live? And of course, the average price is probably going to go up, because when you take 10% of homes off the market, like, we know what happens when supply goes down.
We're seeing that in Perth already, how the property prices have skyrocketed with the lack of supply and the maximum demand.
Exactly.
And I'm just breaking this down. So if property will no longer be insurable and people are going to need to pay cash, that means the people who no longer can afford property, and you have super, super wealthy people gone cash.
Oh, yeah.
But then they can just rent that out, like what's happening at the moment, right?
Yeah, and it's whether people will be willing to rent in those areas. Like, if you think about an area that's likely to have a really catastrophic bushfire through every 10 years, if you've ever been in the experience of a flood or a bushfire, like when I was 12 growing up in Brisbane, we had this massive flood. And I remember my mum's car, we say it drowned. It was stuck in this car park and it just got drowned. But I remember the wheelie bins bouncing on the roof of the cars, you know, like, because they were floating, right?
Wow.
You know, it was a pivotal moment. I will never, ever buy a property that's not on a hill. I never have since.
From that experience?
Yep. From having seen the flooding experience, I was like, I only buy on a hill. You will not find me at the bottom of anything. Right? Like,
Good point.
That was like just this one experience. And if you talk to people who've lived through fires or lived through those floods, it is so traumatic and it affects their lives so dramatically that even being a renter in those areas is unappealing. So there will be people who can't afford to do anything but rent there. Will they be happy about it? I don't know. The phrase that's getting used in the report that came out about this is we might end up with these climate ghettos, like these areas where people are, yeah, they'll buy it, but like, would you buy that property? Like, knowing that you might have to have because the thing for me is if it's your home and you can't get insurance, you've got to put like hundreds of thousands of dollars aside to rebuild.
100%.
Like,
but then if you're renting, that isn't your problem. Then it's the landlord. But then with that risk, what's to say landlord's been like, nah, I'm out. Too risky.
Yeah, and goes like, well, I can't help you, or like it's not feasible. And we talk about resilience, and there are some great resources. For example, there's the Resilience Building Council, I think Resilient Building Council actually, RBC. They will tell you in an area, based on where you are, like you say, okay, I'm going in this street or this suburb, which materials you should use to your house based on the risks to make it more resilient. So that the house, like if you look at Lismore, for example, where I have some distant family, people living in those houses that are mouldy because they can't move, they can't afford to go anywhere else. And even the time that it takes. So like, I think if you were in one of those places and renting and you lost everything, where are you going then? So there's a lot of disincentives to not be there. So that is not going to be evenly distributed. So that's what makes property, I think, a little bit more interesting. If there's a 1 in 10 chance that you're not going to be insurable in 10 years.
When do you think this is going to happen in Western Australia? Because I've been born in Perth. I've grown up here and I haven't seen a natural... Oh, I shouldn't be saying this.
Touch wood.
Touch wood. I've not seen a natural disaster in Perth. No.
Oh, no, Jody. I know. But, like, honestly, if it happens, it wasn't you, okay?
100%.
Look, if the LA fires taught us anything, it's that no city is safe. And certainly we've had, the fires up in Kalamunda, we lost 70-something homes, a few years ago. Those people are still trying to rebuild, still struggling to get
That's crazy.
Yeah, and so that's a very small group compared to something like, the Black Friday fires or the Lismore floods, but it's happening. Over here, it's definitely fire for us, but could it be cyclones? At some point, the cyclones might come further south. And that's the thing, like, we're starting to get. So we've got those two that are potentially dangerous. And then if you look at the flooding maps, if you go south towards, Busselton, like, I love Busselton. If I was going to live anywhere, like, as a retiree, that would be it. I'll never buy a property there. It's going to be underwater in 20 years. So, like, you'd be mad to own something because it's so low-lying. So the rising water levels are going to affect us. So there's a whole heap that we don't know. And the problem with all the climate change stuff is it's going faster than we thought. So all the models thought that we had more time. So the stuff that was going to be happening in 2050, we're already seeing signs of it now. So that's the uncertainty is the big thing. It's really hard to know. So it has made me more, cagey about property. I still think there's wealth to be built there. They still have more people. They need housing. You only have to look at the prices to go, like, it's a good bet. But it's that 1 in 10 risk. And how do you know you're not in that spot? So I think that all those checking, there's some great tools, like the Climate Council has an online tool where you can go put in your postcode and it will tell you how many homes are going to be at risk of which types of disasters at which period. Right. So they've got like a 2050 and a 2100 count. And then we also have recently had the National Risk Assessment for Climate Change. National Climate Risk Assessment, I think it's called, if you want to Google it. And that outlines some of it as well. But it was predicting 611 billion wiped off property prices.
Wow.
Yeah, so we know it's coming. But the insurance industry is basically going, like, if we can't insure it, banks can't lend it. So then think about how important the mortgage book of Australia is for our share market. So of our top 10 companies, 5 are banks, right? The big 4 plus Macquarie. And most of them make a lot of their money, if not the bulk of their money, from mortgages.
100%.
To us.
Yeah. Because what is it, the 3 pillars that Australia economy runs? It's mining, banking, and property.
Yeah, pretty much. That's the underlying traditional stuff. And that's where most of the wealth, whenever you look at the rich, 100s or whatever, a lot of there's some amazing technological advances that we've had that have made people wealthy as well, but most of it is from those areas. And so if the mortgages can't be sold, because the banks can't take the risk, which they can't because of the Basel III. There's this whole heap of regulation. Right? The global financial crisis happened and regulation ramped up huge, right? Like that's why it's such a pain in the butt to go get it, right? Like it's good. It's good. We want it to be a pain in the butt. It's better for all of us.
Yeah.
But in Australia, we're super exposed to that. So suddenly you can't get mortgages as easily. What happens to the bank's business model? Right? So therefore, what happens to their share price? Because their revenue drops. So that's how property could affect the share prices, right? But then there's the other side of, because over half of our global economy is dependent on nature, so we have to be able to farm, for example, or if you're talking about mining, people have to be able to stand in the Pilbara and maintain a truck. Like you still need a human, you still need a sparky, you still need a fitter. Like they're still going to have to be there. There are going to be periods of the year where at the moment it's 11 days of the year or something like that in the Pilbara that it's too hot to work. It's going to be like 3 months of the year. So how do you produce. Our production will drop. And I don't know if you remember during COVID, our global GDP contracted temporarily during COVID, right? Like by a few percent. And we all had to give up all the fun stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like what happens when it contracts by 50%, which it's expected to do by 2070 to 2090, depending on how it goes. So like a 50% drop in what we can produce because nature can't handle it anymore. We have too many disasters. You can't work after you've been through a flood for a while.
Yeah.
The businesses stop. You know, like you spend so much money just on maintaining basics like food, shelter, water. Like there's no fun stuff. We're not researching cures for cancer then. We are busy surviving.
Rebuilding society, 100%.
Exactly. And so then what happens to share prices, right? So
interesting.
So this is why I'm like, this is terrifying. And look, it was only when I read this paper by BlackRock that I mentioned before that they put out in January, where they said this is not priced into the market. And this is BlackRock research. It's not the environmentalists. This is like the kings of capitalism, everybody. They said it's 55% of GDP, so $58 trillion is dependent on nature, either moderately or heavily, and none of that is priced. So they are changing, well, I shouldn't say none. Very little of it is priced into the market. So we're buying shares at prices that don't reflect their risk.
100%.
And so they have identified 3 areas that they're focusing on. So water, biodiversity, and deforestation. And the thing that really gives me a little bit of the ick because I can just imagine them now trying to buy forests and buy farms and like buy water rights. You know, like that would be like what capitalism's answer would be, right? You know, like, well, let's own that stuff. But at which point does society then go like, no, you can't own all that. Like that's a human rights issue. So that's where I feel like there's also that layer. It's getting very complicated. I wonder if it's just my age. But
no, 100% I agree with you. This is the first time I've heard this or had this discussion. Those of you who are listening to this or watching this is a game changer. But when saying that, we saw COVID happen.
Yeah.
We felt it, we lived through it. And we could see that we had X percentage recovery over that period of time. The world is driven by money, nothing else. That's something I've learned. What's stopping someone then being like, okay, well, COVID clearly worked to maintain the capital and the money flowing. You know what? Another coronavirus wouldn't hurt.
Oh gosh.
Do you
That's definitely possible.
That's what I'm thinking about now because we're seeing the risks, we're seeing the numbers and the stats which correlate with these risks. When it gets to a point and the people who control whatever that may be or the elites, whatever you want to call them, look at it and be like, okay, we need to do something. And these climate change activists aren't doing enough. Then we need to resort to the worst case scenario, which will work. I feel like we're going into conspiracy theories now.
It could be a really good movie plot, that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and look, that's certainly possible. I think the interesting thing to think about with COVID is, of course, the reason the economy rebounded, at least in part, is because we printed bucket loads of money. So the US did it, we did it. It gets called quantitative easing. Like, just say print money, people. Like, it's typically economic.
Yeah.
This is my problem with finance. We make everything sound complicated.
Yeah.
Printed money. They invented money. They said, we're going to do all this JobKeeper stuff, and we're just going to sell bonds and get the RBA to print the money. No problems. So we're actually, the thing that's interesting, the overlay of this with the economy is whether we have entered the period of modern monetary theory. So modern monetary theory, MMT, basically says, do you ever really have to pay back those debts? Right? So traditional economic theory says, okay, well, I borrow from that nation or that bank or whatever, and we have to repay it. And that's how the economy works. And this, we manage it through these 4 levers, which include, doing monetary policy in terms of changing interest rates or quantitative easing, or we might do debt write-offs. Those sorts of things to manage, to keep us all happy, right? So we've printed enormous amounts of money, like tens of billions, might even be hundreds of billions, I can't even remember. But that is part of what has inflated all the prices. Okay, so there's a difference between the value, the underlying value of something and the price of something. And I would say we're skewed at the moment. You only got to look at the price of gold or the price of crypto.
100%.
Like, you can't just make the money out of thin air, is the traditional economic theory. But then modern monetary theory is kind of along the lines of, well, why not?
I think that's why these digital assets or physical assets have gone popular, because then people are losing trust from the traditional system. Because, the government can turn around, pull up a photocopier printer, stick a $100 bill in, out goes
astronaut
billions.
costs. Yeah, exactly.
So then people are, okay, we need to resort to our own money.
Yeah.
Then does that still reflect the risk that we're seeing environmentally? If everyone has their own money, is that still a risk factor if climate change is increasing?
Yeah.
All this, because we own this value, not the government.
Well, I think the idea of the people controlling the currency, like the distributed ledger, I love the blockchain technology. It's brilliant. Like, what a fantastic invention. But it has to be underpinned by some value. Like for you to say, well, I've got X amount of Bitcoin or Ethereum or Ripple or whatever it is, and say that's worth this portion of a house or a car at the moment, but like, you know, this much food or, you know, that sort of thing. It has to have some underpinning value. And we can't all own it and be like, I'm a billionaire, and then like, I'm still hungry. Like it just means the food will be billions. So this inflation of the currency, whether it is a cryptocurrency or a fiat currency that we hold in our hands, like the Australian, you know, plastic notes or coins, when you just keep printing it, when you just keep creating it, you end up with this inflation that destroys economies. And so,
Exactly.
So can you sustain that? I don't think you can long term, but we have managed to avoid proper recessions for so long. We keep
Since
stopping it.
2008.
Exactly.
That's the thing. I was having this chat to a business mentor of mine, and he was saying that it's like a balloon. The GFC was that pop, and everything resettled, rebound itself. But now that balloon's gone so big, and since COVID, we did see a bit of a hit, and then at the moment we're seeing a hit, but this balloon seems to be getting taped together. And then,
Yep, there's another leak. Quick, stick some tape on it. Yeah,
Trump said something. Oh, it's back together.
I know, it's very volatile.
This goes back to the sense of the young individuals listening to this podcast. Is it too late to set ourselves up?
No.
Based on past data?
Look, no.
No?
I always think you can play the hand you've got the best you can, right? Like, yes, there are more headwinds against young people now. So I'm often asked, like I bought my first place at 19. Would you at 19 do the same thing today? Oh, yes. Well, like, how's that for timing? This is the ovarian lottery, right? Would I do the same thing if I was 19 today? And I think you're 19, aren't you?
Yes,
yeah,
correct.
So if I was in your shoes, would I do the same thing? And, like, probably not. I think you need other strategies. The reason why I was confident doing that at 19 is my timing was excellent. I've had some great timing.
Shout out to Fran.
Yeah, thank you. Well done, Mum. Thanks. And Dad, of course. Yeah. People involved there. But it was this lucky timing that I came out into this mining boom with this qualification that allowed me to like effectively print money for myself. You know, like I could get a really good wage. So that job security was huge. This knowledge that I could repay the debt. And I think the biggest thing I worry about for young people today is job security. You know, this sense of like being able to take on debt. You want to be confident that you can pay it even if there's no one renting the place out or, you know, like whatever happens. And I think there's so many young people who have trouble finding permanent work or well-paid work now. So I think trades, great choice. Like, I feel like that's probably a very safe bet.
Yeah.
Anything with this human interaction or creativity, I still think we're there. But like you've only seen recently the layoffs that have been happening, right? Like Amazon laid off, was it 14 or 15,000 people?
Yeah, 15.
And they're doing another tranche, the same amount. The AI stuff that's changing those early entry positions that allow people to get these skills and get into the workforce and learn how to be a worker and how to be a really, you know, valuable employee or creator makes it harder. So I think young people have to be more entrepreneurial now. That's probably the major point. And they've got to get really good at making money from their ideas. And I think that's where I see a lot of young people who are very idealistic, which I love. We need that. We need this passion and we need this belief in change and this willingness to go, no, why is that way? I want to change it. But if you can't make that passion financially sustainable, you'll be hungry. And so finding that balance, I think, is the hard thing. You know, and you're kind of like a case study here, right? Like you're doing multiple things. You got your jobs,
100%.
you got your business. I feel like that is more and more the answer for young people is having lots of options so that when one dials down, you dial the other one up and getting quick enough at making money out of your ideas, which is this entrepreneurial attitude. Like test it, see if it works. Can I make money out of it? Okay. Even if it's a save the world idea, it has to be financially sustainable.
For sure.
So I think that changes the approach. So I feel like that's probably makes me less excited about debt for young people. But there's lots of options for investment without debt, like buying shares in small tranches. Like
even with the trades, the incentives of the monetary gain of getting that trade or during this trade, like for example, there's a $25,000 loan which I can take out, and as soon as I turn tradie, I only need to pay 80% back.
Really?
So that's just sit in a high interest bank account. Cheers, Albanese.
Brilliant. But
so looking at it like
awesome.
that is also, you're talking about all these fears of the environment affecting the market, banking market, money market, the share equity market. Mm-hmm. I'm scared. About after this conversation, having this conversation, I'm like, oh no.
See, I didn't want anyone to panic.
No,
I'm so sorry.
This is good. This is good because then we can have this conversation on why are we scared? How do we battle against that? You were saying if you were 19 today, you personally wouldn't steer towards property. Then how would you go about setting yourself up?
So look, one of the things that obviously you hear all this stuff about, and I've laid out that, this is going to go bad, that's going to go bad, panic. There are lots of things that we can do, and that's certainly what I will take as my mission from Money School now. And for me, it's getting people to move their money into investments that are sustainable, and specifically away from fossil fuels. Now, I will preface that with, I have worked in fossil fuels since I was 20. My first job was at a BP refinery in Brisbane as an engineer, right? And then I've worked with Woodside and Adani. I'm not saying this as I'm, no, greenie, I love the greenies, they're great, but, I'm not one. I'm saying this from the inside, we have to get off fossil fuels quick. But the great thing about being a young person, even if you've only got $10 in the bank, that $10 can be moved somewhere where it's not going to increase the rate of fossil fuel production or expansion. So take, for example, in Australia, we've got this great site called Market Forces, which is, I think, .org.au, and it tells you all about banks. And in Australia, we have 18 banks that fund fossil fuels, but we have 83 that don't.
83 that don't?
80, yeah, I think it's 83, might be 8. I think one of them maybe dropped off. I think it was Hiver.
Out of those 10 banks that fund fossil fuels, are they the top banks?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, all the big ones.
Interesting.
Yes, and the big international ones like HSBC. And this is another time when I'm like, barefoot investor, why'd you do this? ING funds fossil fuels. So there's a few really big ones, and 80% of us are with those banks. Right. So 18 banks, 80% of us are with them. Move your money. You've got 80 odd other choices. You can get great interest rates elsewhere. And so even if you're a young person, vote with your feet, because every dollar you put in the bank helps that bank make more money. And if you take money away from them, because of the way the Basel III lending ratios work, so there's a bit of complexity in the background, but they have to have enough capital, which is their share price, that's their tier 1 stuff. They have to have enough of that to cover their debts. And so when you start doing things that affect their cash flow, their share price goes down and they have less financial resources. They have less cash. So they can't lend as much. And so when they can't lend as much, they're going to look at their options for lending. And at the moment, because of the International Court of Justice gave this advisory opinion on climate change on the 23rd of July this year, they basically said governments can be held liable if they allow climate change to continue. They can be held liable for their contribution. So Australia could be sued by an island nation for selling fossil fuels. That's what that allows.
Okay, so on that point there, Australia could be sued.
Yeah.
And then in that sense, the government's, oh shit, I got to pay $1 trillion. Let's just print more money to pay that off.
They could.
So then we're seeing more pressure on the banking systems.
Yeah.
I feel like we're both seeing a massive collapse happening.
Yeah.
But...
Well, that could happen, but what is more likely is the bank goes, ooh, fossil fuel companies just got a lot more risky, right? Because what's the odds of the Australian government and the legal system having to reverse those findings? We've seen it happen twice in New South Wales. 2 coal mines that were approved had their approvals rescinded because of that finding.
Right.
So suddenly that company looks like a worse bet, doesn't it? So you're going to lend money to it? No. The bank is going to go, I've got only so many resources. I don't want to lend them to you because you look riskier. So I think that, consumer advocacy, vote with your feet,
100%.
is probably a really sensible way to go. And there's certainly lots of options for investing that are more sustainable. Now, I am going to be really annoying, and people are going to get angry at me about this if they're okay, but I really don't like ethical investing. Okay,
ethical investing, yes.
So, and the reason I don't like the term, I like the theory, but It always happens. The people on the fringes like ruin it for everybody. Like they become evangelists. It's
Yeah.
like, and I'm sorry if you are one of these people, but if you're into like CrossFit, like you know that joke, you won't have to ask someone if you're into CrossFit. They'll tell you.
Yeah.
It's the same if they're into ethical investing.
Oh, do
they'll
high
tell you.
rocks.
Yeah. So it's a real like. And unfortunately, people are so busy trying to survive that they've lost everybody because they're like, can you stop your moral posturing? Like I'm trying to put food on the table. And so that's why ethical investing is a bit on the nose. So I'm not suggesting we should be ethically investing. What I would love you to do, though, is look up your bank and say, is it on market forces as funding fossil fuels? Right. Can I move? Now, I did this in May. Guess what? All my banking was with fossil fuel banks. I have moved like 90% of it now. I've got one mortgage that because I'm not paying myself enough from my business, I'm really struggling to move. But I'm tempted to just pay that out and like get away from that bank, right? Like, so that is the first thing. Can you move your money? And if it's a savings account, you can move it in like 3 minutes. And that's what I love about this stuff. Do it once, right? The other thing I'd love you to do is look at your superannuation. So if you are in one of the low-cost industry funds, which we all love, right? Most of us, like I think it's 15 million people in the top 10 funds, and like 8 of them are the industry funds. You know, there's only a couple of retail funds in there.
Yeah.
Most of us end up in the default option, which is known as My Super. Like it's a generic option. Like I haven't been through every single one yet. I've been through like 8 out of 10. They all hold fossil fuel companies. They've all got BHP or Woodside or both, or Whitehaven Coal or any of those ones. So in your super, you can move to a different option. They have different investment options. So can you switch over to, they often call them like a socially responsible or conscious or something like that. Can you just switch that? And then you're saying, no, I don't want my money in those. Now, the hard part is, of course, they all own the banks. Like in Australia, it's really hard to get away from that. So if you're really keen on avoiding the banks completely, you actually have to probably change funds to one of, like there's a few options in Australia. There's like Australian Ethical and Future Super have, we don't buy the shares in the banks because of that, you know, that sort of thing.
100%.
But whenever you change, you've got to be very careful that you don't lose your insurance or any of your benefits, things like that. But
Good point.
You know, so there's some stuff to do. And if you're changing banks, you've got to have an authorised deposit-taking institution. All these important little bits that stop people, but you can do it really quickly. So again, I looked at my super in fossil fuels. So I moved super.
Right, okay.
And then if you're buying, like ETFs are really popular and listed investment companies. So if you're buying an exchange traded fund or an index fund of some sort, pick one that doesn't hold those shares. And unfortunately, what you'll hear a lot in my industry is, oh no, you should buy the lowest cost one. You should go for the lowest fees. Same with super. My point to them is, okay, so if the difference is you're going to pay a 0.03% fee or a 0.47% fee, right, 0.5%. So your difference is 0.47. How much does that 0.47 have to compound up to cover the loss of wealth and you having to self-insure your home? Like that margin, yeah, it might cost you a little bit more. But what we're seeing is a lot of those sustainable industries are growing like incredibly, and they're probably going to continue because the energy demand is not going away. So if the fossil fuel companies become less productive, your share price is going to go down anyway. There's this risk of like what we call stranded assets, where suddenly, you know, you can't get the bank for it, can't get the mine approval. Like suddenly you're holding this lease that you can do nothing with.
Or banks put more restrictions on how much cash you can take out because then that's your money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think that's going to get worse for those companies. So you might actually see the superannuation funds and the ETFs and the LICs that hold those moving away voluntarily, but can they do it before the share price goes down and that flows through to your ownership? So I think if we all move, like it's going to send a pretty clear message very quickly. We're not going to be able to turn off fossil fuels overnight, but we definitely need to not expand. We need to make do with what we've got and as equitably as possible. And I'm not the person I don't know how to do that. There are people out there that
switch.
know that. Yeah, exactly. There are people out there who know how to equitably not continue expanding. Use what we've got. That's fine. Like preferably not. But minimise it as much as possible and ramp up. And that's the thing, it's all the subsidies that have gone into fossil fuels that allow them to be sustainable. Like it's trillions of dollars worldwide that subsidises fossil fuels. If we move that subsidy across to the renewable energy sources, then we would very quickly transition. So that is going to be our best chance. Is it everything? No. Like there's a million things we have to do. But like that's a big lever and it's easy to do. You can vote with your feet with that. So I would love people to do that. I'd love to see consumers go, well, I'm moving my money. So catch up, super funds, catch up, ETF. I'm not coming back.
For
and I
sure.
would really like people giving financial advice to be considering this. And they actually legally have to. They have to think about the long-term wealth of their clients. So to recommend an investment that's going to erode your wealth, like I always talk about it as like, here's your wealth now, here's your wealth on 3 degrees, right? Like it's going to go from this to this. So if you're recommending investments that are going to accelerate that, like that's pretty irresponsible. So I think we just don't think about it. It's not talked about. Like every financial advisor I've talked to this year, when I've told them about that BlackRock paper, they've gone, well, I haven't seen that. And I'm like, yeah, no, they're not publishing it.
Oh, no.
It's available, but if you don't go looking for it, you won't find it. Because I bet you they're trying to buy everything before we do. They've got a vested interest in getting in first.
So linking this back to that fear of missing out on these market opportunities. So what I've gotten from this is look at from what is happening. Look around, not so much on the media because the media is pushing something else, it seems. And look at this as what reality is. We are going through these climate change factors. And when it comes to setting myself up, I would look at that and be like, okay, well, if I want to set myself up, maybe I do steer towards more of the environmental friendly approach. But you were saying that you're not for ethical investing.
Yeah, because it's like, whenever you look up ethical investing, there's like 45 metrics. There's this great site called ethosesg.com. And so you can look up most of Australia's super funds, most of our ETFs, like it's an international database. And it will give it a score, A, B, C, D, right?
Yeah.
If you look at that, there's like 45 metrics. I don't know about you, but I find that overwhelming, right?
Yeah.
And look, I care about a lot of things. Like I'm not happy about genocide. I'm not happy about wars. I'm not happy about tobacco. I'm not into any of that. And I get that's why. But everybody's got a different definition of ethical. It's very personal. You and I would have different definitions. And like they might overlap quite a lot, but I bet you they're not exactly the same.
Good point.
And when you start getting into so much detail, everyone ends up in analysis paralysis and they don't do anything. So that's why I'm like, I don't actually care what the rating is. I just want you to look at the holdings. Like go Google your super fund and holdings and there'll be a table or a spreadsheet. And if it holds BHP, Woodside, any of those climate wreckers, so there's a climate wreckers index with 190 companies. You can just, compare it against that.
Okay.
If it holds the banks, your money is currently helping fossil fuels. Like, are you happy with that? And of course they overlap. Like almost every time you move to a, socially conscious or whatever fund, they will have excluded anything with slavery, anything with tobacco, anything with weapons. They've already done that. So you're probably going to get that too. But I'm just particularly hell-bent on this this one area because I'm like, it's the only existential threat to 8 billion humans that if we don't turn back the clock now, we will be too late eventually. We've got a very small window to do this. Like the predictions are kind of like 5 years. Like we've already hit 1.5
Wow.
for warming. So we've got 5 years to close that window. And if we don't...
When you say 1.5, is that degrees?
warming, yeah, sorry.
Warming,
yeah,
right, okay.
Yeah, so we hit 1.4 in Australia last year. We're already at this point, and everyone goes, oh, but it's only a line. Like it's exponentially worse. Like every time you go up. So the sooner we do it, the better. The less money and energy it's going to take, and we're actually just paying the price for not doing this in the 90s when we first thought we should probably do this. Like we could have done this much more slowly and much more, it would have been much more cost effective and everything. We're doing the whole stitch in time saves 9 thing now, right? Like we could have done that stitch back in the 90s. We didn't. Now we have to do 9 stitches. Sorry, that's what's going to happen. But I think that's, that's achievable. We can do it, but we kind of can't just not. You can't ignore
100%,
it. You just
yeah.
can't ignore it. So I still think there's the chance that we will turn this around. I believe in humanity's ability to do it. I know there's a lot of evidence against that, and most cynics would say, "Oh no, we never learn till it's too late." All right, I don't know. We've got to give it a shot. So why not give it a shot? And I still think property could be a good investment. I think you've just got to be very careful about where you buy, and if you're going to build, you've got to think about those building materials, and you've got to be willing to take a bit more risk, which might mean you need to keep a bit more cash on hand for if there is a disaster or something goes wrong.
And the insurance factor too.
Exactly. So you've got to, bluntly, I love the hills in Perth, but I'm not buying up there. Like, there's no way.
It's beautiful.
Exactly. But the fire risk for me is too much.
Yeah.
Now, everyone's going to have different tolerance levels, right? So everybody's going to, and I could be completely wrong. And of course, there's the things you can do within the home itself. Lots of those homes will have excellent fire plans. They'll have fire protection systems with sprinklers, all that kind of stuff. But that adds cost.
Yeah.
So you've just got to kind of balance that out. So I think I do wonder in some ways if young people have dodged a bullet by not being able to get mortgages.
I remember you saying that like pre-call, it was like that sense of, it's a blessing that property is super expensive because the serviceability of a young person being able to afford that is far less. Blessing in disguise. Do your own research. This is up to you.
And like who knows? Like
who knows? Yeah.
For me, I was kind of like, maybe you have dodged a bullet. Maybe not owning might turn out to be a good thing because your ability to be mobile and to move to different places in a decade's time when it's predicted to be reaching that point, that could be really beneficial. So I do wonder if we're going to become, as a society, less centric on being anchored to a place and having to be more mobile, having to have this tolerance for needing portable homes or quick build homes and that kind of stuff. So those trends will probably, I would imagine, become more interesting over time. So
also looking as that alone with it being, okay, I can't afford property now, I have 50 grand in capital, and then been looking at, okay, well, maybe I do start that entrepreneurial mindset and see this gap, be like, okay, we'll invest in this sector or that sector. Is that kind of what you're getting from with the flip we've seen with COVID and all these resources and stats coming out, that society is shifting slowly but fast, and it's essential for people to adapt with this, with their investing technique?
I do think you have to acknowledge it. I think, look, some people will prefer to stick their heads in the sand. It's a big risk, right, if you do that. I think if you're going to look for sectors that you're investing in, so this decision about are you going to go for these broad-based index funds, which is, the Warren Buffett theory, like just go and buy an ETF and an LIC or whatever you like, that covers everything. I'm saying you probably want to exclude the fossil fuel companies and potentially the banks that fund them for those financial reasons of we need to slow down the wealth erosion, but it's not compulsory. You can certainly find ETFs and LICs that don't have those. Now, the major argument everybody goes is, well, the big tech stocks are in those ones. Like if you buy an American one, you're going to be funding Meta and Nvidia and all those ones. And then we find them pretty evil. And I'm like, I agree. I'm not excited about their practices. I think they are a symptom of what we've created. But, you can't do nothing, right? So I think that's the hard bit. There's no perfect answer. You're not going to find a perfect answer. And almost all of finance is laying bets. You're betting on this thing, right? Yeah. But I think slow and steady, and I think that those things will still go up in value. There's no reason to think that the entire thing will collapse. Like, it's not going to go, I wouldn't expect it to go to zero. Like, it's not going to go to zero. Yeah. Right? But how do you make sure that you've got enough money to eat, put a roof over your head, clothes on your back? Those things are going to be, I think that's where the income stuff's so much more important, this ability to earn enough to cover your living costs. And then you see the investment as cream, this added benefit.
And what you were talking about in the book too, not relying on that one stream of income to reach that FITR, financial independence, time rich, is not relying on one stream of income and looking at these, whether it's dividends, franking credits, property, if that's your thing, and looking at that as a whole. So then hearing all these risks and all these political things going on out there, okay, and the banks as well. This is so much information.
I know, I'm sorry.
No, this is good.
Get a brain overload.
This is good. But then what can I do, let's say straight after this episode, this interview, right now, so I can increase the odds on living an FITR future? Because the era you grew up in and then the era my grandparents grew up in is we've seen massive changes. Yeah. And now we're seeing complete changes since after COVID. We've seen typically interest rate cuts means slowing economy. We're seeing the complete opposite now. How does that work? Except for the Fed's announcement, but we'll not go there.
I'm not living in America. They're terrifying.
Yeah. So what can I do right now to increase these odds on setting myself up?
So I think that play your own hand the best you can. It still applies, no matter what happens, right? And there are some things I think that are fundamental to understanding money that you can still apply. So first of all, money is a resource that we use wisely. We don't waste it. By waste, you can still have fun. Just don't spend it on stuff that doesn't give you bang for buck, right? Don't. You can't have all the things. Pick a few things, right? So long as you are saving ambitiously, and putting some money aside, and you have a nice buffer fund, and you're focusing on building on that. That's probably the best recipe for
And the
good
buffer
sleep.
fund's just another name for that emergency fund.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just a nice comfy cushion to land on when something goes wrong.
Love that.
And then anything that's extra after that is a bonus, and you can start investing that. So then you have to understand, I guess, the opportunity cost of the different investments and what's going to work for you. And there's no like one size fits all with this. Like I've said in the book, my husband hates debt. So like we learned that the hard way by investing in property together. It's not for him. Like he's only ever going to be into like shares, right?
Yeah.
And he's not touching crypto. He finds that like an absolute like heart attack as well.
Wow.
So it's one of those, it's a know yourself thing, right? But the only way you get to know yourself is by practicing. And so, for example, if you're not sure if you like shares, then try the ASX share market game where you get a virtual $50,000 and you trade in a live market, and you'll start having to look at like when do the dividends come in and like what moves the indicator.
Or just click buy, sell, buy, sell, buy, sell.
Exactly. Well, there's people who win doing that. I always lose that game because it's only 15 weeks long. And I'm not like active. I'm like, I'll just buy and I'll wait.
Yeah.
And 15 weeks is not often long enough to win that game, especially because I'm usually buying something really boring. So I'm not in it to win that. It's about learning how it works, right? And then starting small. Like you can start small with plenty of investments, And like the minimum trade for buying shares on the ASX is like $500. It's not as inaccessible as it used to be, especially when the brokerage. You can get brokerage for like $5 now these days. Like it used to be hundreds. So those things you can sort of dabble in. There's no reason that you can't try that. I just would really like you to be conscious of what you're buying when you're looking at those ETFs and what you're doing with your super. I think for young people, super can be so nebulous as well. But if you're getting compulsory super, make the most of it. Like make sure you're getting that doing good things for you.
I love that point too. You speak about it in the book that super is one of those things where everyone has it. It's compulsory. Take advantage of it, but also keep in mind that you do not control the government turning around and being like, oh, we're going to slap more tax, or oh, retirement age is now 85. You might as well be 6 feet in a coffin by then.
Yeah, exactly.
So then there's a lot of it you can't control, which I'm cautious of, which I think isn't taught as well.
Well, and it's this personal risk preference.
Yeah.
It's really up to you. And like there's plenty of people who will say, no, chuck as much as you can into super because the rules get tougher and tougher, and the sooner it goes in, the compounding effect, all that stuff. And I understand. But if I'd listened to that advice, I would not have gotten to financial independence when I did. It wasn't right for me. So I think that there's no one size fits all. Take your time. But if you're getting compulsory stuff, make the most of it because you can't do anything about that. It's going in. You may as well. It's your money. Make the most of it. The voluntary extra stuff is like it's an up to you question. And again, make sure you're picking a super fund that you're really happy with. Make sure it's holding the assets that you're happy with. And it's really, you can Google all this. They have to report it. You just like Google the super fund, the investment type, and say what's the holdings, and you'll get a list. It'll tell you where it's got everything. And they have to keep it up to date. It's regulatory.
Exactly.
So it's not hard to find that info. That's why I'd say do that rather than look at the ethical sites, because otherwise you walk out going, oh my God, 45 factors, I don't know.
My brain's bleeding.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know which one. That's why I much prefer that. So, but I think that taking an active interest is really important. But for young people, I still think this ability to make money is going to be what it certainly was for me. Being able to really progress my career in my 20s and make a lot of money towards the end of my 20s, like a factor of 5 from when I started, that sort of stuff is what's going to give you the best chance of getting there quickly. It's very hard to get there quickly without an income. And that's why I'm so nervous for young people who struggle to find good income. So I think the best thing you can do is exactly what you're modelling, Keone, is having multiple options and having something that's a really good base, but also having some entrepreneurial stuff. And I don't want you all to have to work 80 hours a week for the rest of your lives, but if there's any time you can do it, it's in your 20s.
100%.
So I feel like focusing on your ability to earn an income and improving your skills and trying lots of things. Because people change jobs so often, you don't have to have the perfect job, but certainly please chase something with some money behind it. I know. Yeah. I've got a daughter who's an artist. She's into visual arts, right? Like she's mad keen. And I remember we went to the school for the interview, and they were like, "It's not about being an artist. Don't worry." They must have known I was coming. It must have been like, funny.
You're shaking, sweats coming down.
But they were like, no, it's about project management skills. Okay, so artists learn incredible project management skills. And so it's a fantastic skill. That's a great job, project management, really lucrative job, very specific skill set, applicable to almost every industry. And doesn't actually, as far as I remember, I mean, it might have changed, didn't have a professional qualification that you had to get to do a good job at it. Like, there might be people who did do professional qualifications, but there was originally something called the PMBOK, the Project Management Body of Knowledge or Book of Knowledge, and you could just get that online. Like, that was how to project manage 101. So it doesn't mean you have to go and be an engineer or be a tradie or anything like that, but find something that you can turn into an employable skill. And you don't have to love it. It doesn't have to be your passion, okay?
I think that's important you brought that up.
It doesn't have to be. You have to enjoy it and you have to get satisfaction out of it. But every job is going to have crap, right? And every job's going to have gold.
Yes.
That ratio.
The crap and gold ratio.
Yeah, you want to get the right ratio, okay? And look, I was lucky that I did love problem solving, but engineering is bigger than just problem solving. So I loved that piece of it. That was enough gold for me. I could deal with all the crap, right? And I still really enjoy it. But the thing that gets me out of bed in the morning is teaching people about money. I couldn't get to teaching people about money and having this business until I had built enough skills and foundation elsewhere. So don't worry too much in your 20s if you haven't found the mad, passionate, I'm in love with this job.
Or that $1 million hustle.
Exactly.
Thing,
Yeah, it's okay. But find something that you can make some money out of. And those skills, if you learn skills that are transferable, like engineering and that problem solving, I use that every day. My risk management skills I use every day. It has been beneficial in so many ways, even though I don't do much engineering these days. Like, I wouldn't put me in charge of a processing plant, for example. But, you know, like those skills that are transportable help you make more money. And the intersection of where you take a unique... So the reason I'm good at this, I'm bragging, I know, but I am good at this stuff, is because I'm an engineer, not a money person. So I can look at it and go, oh, this is the important stuff, you know, and not without the jargon. And it's that intersection of those skills that's made it quite good for me. You will find an intersection, you'll take those skills and you'll apply it to a different industry, and suddenly you will bring a view or a skill set that hasn't been seen before, and that is where heaps of money is. That is where, like, the big money is. So don't panic if you haven't found the perfect thing. You'll take those skills elsewhere later.
That's such a valuable point you've just raised, and what I've gotten from that is, if you're listening to this, watching this, whatever, diverse your skill set in quite a few things. Is there a difference between quite a few things and too thin?
Good question. So the jack of all trades problem, right? So do you go niche and deep? There are certain people who go really niche, really deep, and they're like the expert on that thing.
Yeah.
So if I think about my experience, there was like maybe 3 blokes that we had in originally Western Mining and the BHP that, like, if there was a problem, you call one of these 3. Like, you call Roger, you call Jorma, or you call one of those 3, they'll be fine.
Yeah.
But getting to be the one of the 3 is really hard. It takes a long time, and you have to have a specific skill for it. So I think you can do it, definitely, by niching. I think the point of having a broad experience is finding what you like and finding, like, taking knowledge from areas to other areas, because that doesn't happen as easily in big companies, for example, you know, like applying risk management, like the finance industry. I'm sorry to all the finance people listening, like, finance's risk management is just so poor. It's just so, like, I would not leave them in charge of a processing plant, definitely, right? Like, they do not get real risk, right?
Yeah.
And partly because of how we measure and partly because of how we report, but they're not taught it. They don't live it. But being able to transport those skills around, I think if you can learn a good base skills, and, like, certainly communication and those sorts of things, anything that's going to help you improve your writing or your speaking or how you relate to people, you can apply that anywhere. Like, go nuts on that stuff. But don't be afraid to try a lot of things to work that out. But certainly what you're trying to do is ramp up your earning potential out of it. It can't just be like, well, it probably can be, but I think it's not as lucrative to just be experimenting for the fun of it.
Such a great point.
Yeah, you want to pick some things that you can turn into money making.
Definitely. Lacey, the last guest I interviewed on the podcast left a question for you. Not knowing who you are, what your mission is, or what you stand for. The question is, how would you justify your life now to your youngest self?
Oh, I'm a slow learner sometimes. I think that's how I justify it. I'm really embarrassed that it's taken me this long to work out the wealth impact from climate change. Like, I should have been able to work this out sooner. What is wrong with me? So I kind of like go, why did that take so long? But that's probably how, sorry, I was slower working that out than I could have been. But I think if I think back to, you know, sort of close to your age, I was so ambitious. Like, I wanted to be CEO of BHP. Well, it was Western Mining back then, but I wanted to be CEO. And, like, that that transition, I think my younger self would be so shocked to see where I am now. Like, why
Wow.
aren't you CEO already? Like, what happened to you? And there's so much more to life. You just don't have that full breadth of experience or even knowing what's out there when you're young. So a lot of it is just this not knowing the option existed and then like stumbling across it and going, oh, that's a good option. Oh, excellent. So that's what I mean, I guess, with the slow learning. It takes me a while sometimes to learn some important things.
I feel like that's a good point, but also as someone who's grown up in this world, I don't know much about climate change, to be honest. And I think that's scary. This is the first conversation I've ever had regarding finance and climate change and the combination. Oh my gosh.
I think you mean combination. Yeah.
Combination.
Yeah, that's
Boom.
the one.
The combination. Oh my gosh. We're just going to skip this word. Of the finance world and the environmental world. I think that's such a fascinating thing, and it's too important to neglect in your strategy in this day and age. I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, it is. It's become as a shock to me as well. But I think if you're interested in that stuff, a good person to follow is Dr. Ken Henry, who's very well respected for his tax reform work. But I got to see him speak a couple of times last week, and he basically said there is no competition between the economy and nature. We have to have nature to have an economy. I just think it's not well known. Like, I'm not kidding when I say there's not a single financial advisor that I've spoken to. I've spoken to a lot in the last few weeks. They haven't heard this. This is not on you.
That's kind of scary too, though.
We're not talking about it. I know. It's quite, so I feel a responsibility to bring it up now and try.
I love that.
So I'm still working out all the solutions. So hopefully I'll have better ones for you next time. But at least there's a few there.
Money School 2.0 coming soon.
Yeah, we'll see. I have got a couple of ideas.
Love that. Lacey, what question do you want to leave for the next guest, not knowing what business they're in, what they stand for?
Oh, okay. Well, I'm going for a very traditional one, which is if you could wave a magic wand and change one thing, what would it be?
Love that. Lacey, if you could go back to your 19-year-old self, that one stepping in the first property door, what would you tell her and why with the knowledge you have now?
I would tell her you can be more patient if you want to. No. No, I think I would just give her encouragement, like keep going. So when I bought that first property, I was in my second year of uni. My lecturers thought I was crazy. My friends thought I was crazy. It's only really my parents who believed in me, like doing that. And I think I'm just very lucky to have that support. So I think I'd probably just give me it's okay, keep going. You're making some good choices. And even if it's not the traditional choices that everyone else is making, that's okay. And you can find your way. So yeah, I would also tell her to be building more systems early. I think that's the other thing. I did so much through behaviour and discipline early on, and now I realise so much of money is systems. You have to
100%.
be really disciplined with your health. Like, you have to do the stuff 80% of the time. You have to eat well and you have to exercise. But money, you can set up the systems and then you don't have to manage them. And I think it took me too long to get to that point. So I'd be like, more systems, Lacey. Go build some more systems, and then you don't have to think so
said.
much.
Such a great point. Lacey Filipich, thank you so much for coming onto the Growth Concept podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's been a delight. I'm so glad you didn't run out screaming and that I didn't terrify you so much that it was going to all go down.
Links and resources are in the show notes below. This amazing book. Thank you so much for writing this. I wrote a thank you card. So thank you so much for the work you put in. I've gotten a lot from it and wishing nothing but success and happiness your way. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Right back at you, Ken.